Hi,
It's
how
Linda.
are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Okay. Well, we'll just start with this, and then we'll hang up and we'll have a conversation afterwards, our personal one, okay?
Sounds like a plan.
Okay. Hi, everyone. This is Ray Luskin from The Winning Adventure and The Creative Activist, and my guest today is Linda Milberg. And full disclosure, she's my sister, and I'm so happy to have her here today on our call. For many, many years, she was the COO of a huge company, and when she retired from that, it was an $800 million company. She retired from that. She decided to start her own consulting company, and she worked with nonprofits and social enterprises. And now today she focuses on her art, which she calls love letters. So today, thank you, Linda, for joining us.
I am so delighted to be here with you. Where do we start?
Where do we start? So why don't you talk about, I think, the role of creativity and art in your life?
Wow.
I know that's a big one.
Really big topic. I really started to pursue my art probably about 8 years ago. And I was doing a lot of crafts. I was doing woodworking and sewing and silk screening, and I've been doing a lot of different things, but never really went into fine arts until just recently, in the last 5 years, I guess, and I call that very recent. I feel like I am Grandma Moses, working towards giving the world the vision that I have of what the world is.
And what is that vision then?
The vision is really that there is enough for everybody. The vision is abundance. The vision is you can be happy. You can choose to be happy and not have to wait for happiness to come to you, but actually make that choice.
Oh, I love that. That's wonderful. So how would you define creativity? Because you didn't mention that you wrote a book. You know, I mean, there are so many pieces, and I know we've had this discussion because I never considered myself, when I started writing, I didn't consider that being an artist in the same way that I did as a painter. So it was sort of an interesting transition to note that is just another form of my creativity. So let's talk about your creativity and how, again, you started to talk about how it evolved, and let's have a little bit more conversation about that.
Well, actually, I think that my creativity was as challenged in the business world as it is in the art world, because you are constantly seeking creative solutions to problems that come up, whether it's human interaction with your employees, or whether it's the logistics of a huge company. Being in wholesale distribution is very satisfying to me, was very satisfying to me, because it is a well-oiled machine. And one thing gets out of place and the whole thing goes up for grabs. So it requires a tremendous amount of creativity to keep that machine running. Then, as you said, then when I left the corporate world, I did write a book, and it was a very personal book, a very personal story of a woman who said, "Is this all there is?" Because I was incredibly successful in the business world, and I have a wonderful husband. I have a beautiful child, and I really had to wonder, is this all there is? And that's when I started to explore this other side of myself. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Talk about the satisfaction of creating. I mean, I'm not a crafty person, so that was never my thing. I mean, as a kid, you would be knitting and crocheting, and you did all these things that I never did. And I know for us, there was something going on, because you kept saying, on some level, we had this conversation at one point of like, well, you were the painter, so I did other things. So, and I'm sure other people have come across that in their lives. So maybe we should talk about that.
being the younger sister and having you be so good at painting from a very early age. I mean, you were always painting and creating. I really didn't want to enter that arena. I really felt that there were other things that I could use to explore my creativity and to express myself. And you're right. When we went to the Art Institute when we were kids, you did the painting and I did clay. And then I did a lot of clay, and it was really only when I had this vision of myself standing at an easel painting, but I couldn't see clearly what I was painting, and a friend said, well, why don't you just take a class? And it was, the light bulb went off, and I kind of went, duh, of course. And that's when I really started to explore this side of me. And then using Photoshop is a totally new part for me to explore, and that came because I went to an artist's studio and I fell in love with one of his pictures, and I was chatting with him, and he said, well, I do this on Photoshop, and I went, no. And he said, yeah, absolutely, I do all of my stuff on Photoshop now. So I felt this need to go out and explore that as well.
Okay, and so what are some of the challenges you're facing today when you do, as you go into this world of Photoshop and how has that been for you? I mean, what are some of the challenges? Because you are creating from a different place. Has that changed you?
Well, the challenges were more in the technical side. I don't feel like I am very technologically advanced. And thankfully, I have good friends who know Photoshop and can kind of dig me out of my wherever I am and help me get to where I want to go. So that it's not... It's an interesting question if there are challenges because of that. I'm trying to figure out how to merge the Photoshop experience with some of the other pieces that I have been exploring, like Zentangle, and not sure how those pieces will fit together.
For those why don't you explain what Zentangle is? Because not everybody will know that, Linda. Why don't you tell people what Zentangle is?
Zentangle is an art form that is actually done on, I think they're 4x4 cards, and it's all pen and ink, and it is learning hundreds, if not thousands, of designs and then choosing how to use them on this little tiny card. And because you are so focused on the intricacies of the designs, which are actually very simple, but they're very intricate, you really get into a Zen place. It's as if you are meditating.
I love that. Well, and I've always said that. To me, being, whatever form art takes, for your creativity, if you're spending 20 minutes and it feels, like, and all of a sudden the time flies by and you could have been there for an hour and you get this rest and relaxation, that is that Zen moment in all art. And I do believe that happens whether you're scribbling and doodling, painting, when you're just immersing yourself in those kinds of situations. You get that piece, and they've done studies, in hospitals. That's why they do art therapy now, and especially with cancer patients and stuff, and because that releases endorphins. It lowers your blood pressure, and you feel better.
Well, I certainly do. So I'm assuming that can translate to anybody who chooses to do it, and it's not complicated. And anybody who says, "Oh, I can't draw a straight line with a ruler," and certainly I can't cut a straight piece of paper, no matter what I do, it doesn't matter because the end result is so incredible that you kind of scratch your head and go, "Oh my goodness, how did that happen? How did I get there?" And people who see my artwork go, "Oh my, isn't that fabulous?" And that always makes me happy. Anybody who sees it and appreciates it and just enjoys it with me, it makes me very happy.
Oh, that's wonderful. So why don't you just talk a little bit about, well, how would you define creativity, and what are the benefits of creativity that you see?
Wow. Defining creativity would probably be using your imagination, going inside, using your imagination to see the situation, and then the way I look at it is I puzzle out an answer from whatever situation I'm looking at, and I consider that the ultimate in creativity, whether it's problem solving, whether it's putting something down on paper, whatever it is, the fact that I can use my imagination to envision a result and then figure out how I'm going to take the steps, what steps I need to take to get me there, is the ultimate in creativity.
So what are some of the prompts you use or the tools you use to get to that state of imagination?
I would say sleep is one of the number one, because it seems that if I go to bed and I have a problem in my head when I go to bed, that when I wake up in the morning, I generally have a solution because my brain has been working on it all night. I don't really use a lot of props. It's really mostly in my head. I do say I spend a lot of time in my head.
Okay.
So I don't journal, and I don't doodle, and I don't do any of those things. But whatever it is, it has to make me feel good. So when I sing, I am all there. I sing, and I sing through my heart. And that's how I look at all of the things that I do, whether I'm speaking, whether there's some message I want to put out there. In my imagination, I run that message through my heart and then either out my brush or out my mouth, so that it is always heart-centered.
I love that. That's wonderful. So when you get stuck, though, what do you do? We all get stuck sometimes.
You're right, and I am fortunate enough that I am not dependent on doing my art or my creativity for my livelihood. Mm-hmm. So when I get stuck, I can walk away and I can turn or pivot to something else, because to me, when I cook a beautiful meal, that's creative. So, and because I have a husband, I'm generally in the kitchen at least once a day cooking something wonderful. I think that for me, it's a question of, if I'm stuck in one particular area, I let it go. And then I turn and I pivot to something else, and I do something else. And it always seems that magically the answers come to me.
I love how
you mentioned. That's true for most people. What?
I love how you mentioned, your creativity isn't just limited to the art. It's about singing. It's about cooking. And it can be gardening and whatever that is, decorating your home, whatever the moments of pure joy that you get in that flow. I love how you're saying that. And it's interesting because we've had this discussion, because you work on one piece of art at a time and I work on several, and that's how, but again, that's me pivoting, if you want to choose that word, to another piece. So if I was writing 3 books at once, I paint 2 paintings at once, I read 2 books at once. That is who I am. And so it's so different the way we approach things, but they're really not that different. It may be just a different language. And, you start expressing yourself. If you can't express yourself in your painting, you express it in your palette and with what you cook. I mean, you've always been that person to me. I don't cook at all. Thank God there are delis and, I go out and buy food. But you're always the one, let me try this. I'll try this recipe. Let me try the experiment. And that was never where I would play. That is not a realm that I enjoy playing in. And I think that attitude that you have is just more expansive in the terms of creativity.
Well, I look at myself and I'm a very consecutive person. So I do one thing and I do it really, really well, and then I turn to another thing and I do it really, really well. But it would be so overwhelming to me to have several pieces going simultaneously. I admire that of you, because I cannot even imagine doing that, or even reading 2 books at the same time, much less writing them. Just that would be very overwhelming to me.
Yeah, our brains just work differently in that, and we've always been that way. And so I laugh because, nature versus nurture, we both grew up in the same house, had the same experiences, we're exposed to the same things, and yet we are so different in certain aspects. We come back together in the sense of creativity and love and coming from a place of our heart and wanting to share and making a difference. And that those things are inherent in who we are. And yet we approach them so totally different. It does amaze me.
Absolutely. I mean, you're right, because we are very similar in the value system of where we're coming from. But our approaches are completely different.
Exactly. And I think that's what it is in life, and that's why this is a great interview, because people are going to say, oh, okay, there is no right or wrong, and that's the idea. There is no right or wrong, and we judge ourselves too often. And I know as kids, we competed with each other, but we never mentioned it, but I'd be like, ooh, look at what she's doing, look what she's doing, and, all those kind of things. And we do that today when we're judging ourselves. Oh, my work isn't good enough, or this isn't good enough. It doesn't matter. It is about our own personal process and the joy we bring to ourselves and the world by expressing our message, and for us coming together in that we very much have a similar message. I mean, we went to that last year, we went to hear this woman talk about dance and the idea of the term disabled. She works with disabled, and that's what she chooses. People who are missing limbs, who have problems moving. She's a choreographer, and we were questioning, when do you use the term disabled, and is it really helping and empowering if we're always looking for differences versus how are we similar?
That's a big deal for me, because our entire society is based on let's celebrate our differences, and I appreciate that, and certainly respecting the differences in culture make a lot of sense and are imperative to our society, but we're all the same.
Right.
We're all the same underneath. Well, you can talk to if you're a woman and you meet another woman, you can talk about being a woman and being a mom and being a wife and being whatever it is, a daughter. And the experiences cross the board. It doesn't matter whether or not the woman grew up the way that you grew up. You still had the same experiences. And it makes me laugh when people sit there and go, well, I couldn't talk to that person because that person doesn't understand me and whatever. Now, granted, certainly the male species and the female species don't talk the same language most of the time. But certainly women to women, you can talk to anybody and find common ground. Right.
And I think that's part of the message of our creativity is provoking conversations, looking for, getting us to start thinking about these types of questions. And I think that's what art serves in this purpose and creativity is let's have these discussions. We may not always agree, but they are a format to get out there and talk about things. And whether it's the writing, it's music, art, performance, it doesn't matter. We each have our unique creative expression, and I think it's imperative to all of us to find out what that is for us, and because we do express ourselves differently, and we all have inherent genius if we look at it that way. That creates conversations and hopefully creates more peace and harmony in the world. So
I think if I had one message that I would say, if you want to tap into your creativity and you don't feel you have any, is to create some space in your life to have quiet, because that's when the creativity will start to bubble up. That if you're always so busy, you don't have time to allow that creativity to come to the fore.
Right. Why don't you tell people about how you came to create love letters and what that means
to you? It's such a favorite topic of mine. Well, you and I were visiting someone's home, and there was a picture on the wall that I couldn't take my eyes off of it, and I kept looking at it, and I didn't understand it at all, but I was drawn to it, and I thought to myself, This is like I'm looking at hieroglyphics, but I don't have the key. And from that one thought, it occurred to me, I can create my own alphabet. So I set about creating my own alphabet, a visual language that then I could take words and phrases from other people, what they wanted to share with their loved ones, and I could then create a picture. I would translate their words and phrases into the visual language. And then I would add pictures, and I would add drawings from the internet. I was so honored that someone asked me to do a love letter for a little boy who's 11 years old who is battling cancer, and he's really into Lego robots. So I was able to do a love letter for him and put in a Lego robot, which really it makes my heart sing when I even think about it. And so I started doing this, and I actually, of course, did it with my own family first, because that's where you put all of that information. And I really liked the way they came out, and I started to share them with people. And everybody I shared them with, they said, oh, could I have one of those? I really want one of those, whether it was for a grandchild, whether it was a wedding, for a grandfather. It was really interesting, and of course I'm having such a good time doing it. And the piece that I like the best is the fact that I ask them to make a donation to an organization that we are actively involved in, so that it's a charter high school in Chicago. And that way the kids at Epic Academy get to receive the benefit of the dollars, the financial support. So everybody wins. I win because I get to do something that I love to do. Hopefully my customer wins because they get to enjoy what I've done. And, of course, the kids get the financial support.
It's a great model and something I had not heard about before, where people were doing that. And you're doing it for the love of everyone. And how did you come up with the term love letters?
I really thought about it. I went back and forth, and I wanted to come up with my 60-second I'm in an elevator speech when people say, what do you do? And I could not come up with anything that made sense to me. I was all over the board. It was a puzzle. It was a letter. It was a language. I couldn't come up with anything. And all of a sudden, I gave myself a little bit of space, and it came to me that really what I'm doing is I'm creating love letters. And it's enough of a spark that people say to me, well, what is that? And then I get to share it with them. I get to share the picture, or I get to share the idea with them, and they get it. They get the concept, and that's what was so important to me.
All right. Have you created a website yet or not?
No, I haven't. It's kind of on my list, but it's just not a priority for me. And okay. I know I need to do it, but if somebody is interested, what they need to do is just contact me via my email, which is lmilberg@comcast.net. And if they're interested, I would be happy to share the work with them and see if they have any interest in having one of their very own.
Right. Well, instead of having a picture of Linda, we're having a picture of her artwork for the square on our Creative Activist website, or our Facebook group, so everybody can get a little idea of what Linda's doing. And I just love them, and I am so grateful that Linda and I share so much today. As siblings, you don't always share these things when you're children, but as adults, we truly love and appreciate each other and the work that we each are doing.
We have worked hard to get there.
Right, and so we're telling you folks, this is more than, it doesn't always happen overnight. So we have a lot of expertise in a lot of areas. So, but I think that we both, this sharing of love and our creativity and wanting to give back is really something that, we grew up with Tikkun Olam, which means repair the world. and they were modeled by our parents. You know, that was one of the gifts they did give us, about the idea of philanthropy, making a difference in the world. And we both have done that throughout our lives, always in different ways, but now we do it both through creativity, which is really a wonderful thing to share. And I hope that you have this opportunity to do the same. So, Linda, thank you for this interview, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. It was a delight. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.